Welcome to Discipleship Unveiled, where we unveil the process of biblical discipling and being a disciple. I'm Rob Haley. Thank you for listening. Today we will be covering the roles of the discipler. Let's go. Discipleship is walking with a disciple in being transformed by the renewing of the mind. Discipleship is walking with a disciple in being transformed by the renewing of the mind. What we're finding is that discipleship in general is just simply not defined in American churches. We don't know what it is. Generally, what we're seeing is there's different definitions for what discipleship is, and it comes in many different forms. You'll see it in the form of classes. You'll see it in the form of events. You'll see it in the form of home groups. And all of these things, of course, are wonderful, and they do serve a powerful purpose in the church. But these things aren't discipleship. And we just really haven't put our finger on what discipleship is. And if you do ask any church leadership, generally what you'll get is different sets of definitions. And we don't need to have different sets of definitions, but there are reasons why this has happened, and that's because discipleship in and of itself is a concept that isn't just spelled out from A to Z in the scriptures, just right in full view. So we can go and look at faith is in Hebrew 1, and we can see that we have definitions for faith. And faith gets used so much, and the word is used quite a bit in the scriptures, that we can take all these little instances where we see faith, and we can begin to form our idea of what that is. But discipleship in and of itself, you don't see, okay, this is a part of discipleship, so do this, and discipleship is. And so what has happened is it has lain just below the surface of the church knowledge, if you will. And what you'll find in discipleship is that you need a seasoned Christian to come along and actually follow that thread of discipleship throughout the Bible. And it is there, and you can see examples of it in many different places, and most of them won't even be a surprise to anyone. It's just that how do we put it together? And one of the best things and best starting places we can start from is simply defining what discipleship is. So we here at Discipleship Unveiled, we have this definition of walking with a disciple in the transformation of the renewing of their mind. But we want to also let's go deeper now. Let's begin to identify the roles and that will define the activities that a discipler will walk the disciple through. So we see so many places in the Psalms where David is calling out to the Lord, teach me your ways, show me your precepts, show me your witnesses. What are your laws? I want to know them. We see in other places in the scriptures where we want to write the word upon our heart, and we want to know the ways of the Lord. And for American parlance, the ways of the Lord is actually a great phrase because we don't know how to walk with the Lord. And there's an assumption that there's an intuitive way to do that. And as a beginning disciple, there just isn't. So they have this new spirit in them, and they've never had an experience with a living spirit in them, let alone the Spirit of God living in them and providing answers and providing direction in ways that they're just not used to seeing. So as a discipler, we know this. We know that the disciple doesn't understand how to walk, so we want to understand how we're going to walk, because if we're the leaders, then we need to understand what we are doing, and then we'll be the ones that will take the disciple under our wing, and we will show them the ways of the Lord. We've said before that we're not taking the place of the Father, and we don't want to become a disciple's answer man. we want to introduce them to their Lord and Savior and teach them how to walk with the Lord. And how can two walk together, and unless they be agreed? And the answer is no. They have to be agreed. And what the disciple is he's going to be formed and shaped with the mind of Christ, and then he's going to learn, or she is going to learn to walk with the Lord face to face with them, solving problems, overcoming, and understanding their next steps at any given point in their life. So the roles that we're going to talk about here, and I won't be able to cover in depth each one in this session. We'll do follow-up sessions, and we'll blow those out, and we'll try to understand these roles as best as we can. This isn't the definitive definitions for all of these. It's certainly not the end. It's not exhaustive in any way. But we're going to start with great definitions, and then we're going to learn to walk in those roles. But we absolutely need to define them first. And a great example is when you do walk into a church and ask them if they have a discipleship program, how many times do you hear, well, we have mentors? Well, unfortunately, mentors make mentees. Disciplers develop disciples. And so we need to understand that it's more than just mentoring. It's more than an accountability partner. If we can understand these roles, then we can be as effective as we possibly can be as disciplers and fulfilling that great commandment. So we generally know how to preach the gospel, but when we get those people in, what do we do with them? And boy, what a burden it becomes on a church to have hundreds, if not thousands, of people who are born again, but no disciplers. And if you don't have disciplers, you don't really have effective disciples. So we want to understand this process. We want to know what it is to be a discipler. So we have a definition for it, and that is a discipler walks with a disciple in the transformation of the renewing of their mind. And then now there are roles. Now I've identified here 7 roles. There could be more, there could be less, but for our purposes, we've identified 7 that are critical to not the disciple, but the discipler understanding how to walk in these roles and when and which roles that they're in. Because in any sit down with a disciple, you'll find, if you haven't already been doing it, you'll find that the environment shifts for the disciple, and they may not come ready for a discipleship session. They might be distracted by certain things. They might not have got the concepts that you taught last week, or they might have been busy. They might be tired. They might have had a relationship challenge. So we as disciplers, we want to be able to understand these roles, and it helps us better shift from one to another. And again, the whole idea is that we as disciplers are effective in the church, and that's what we're not seeing. We're not seeing redoing classes over again being effective. We're not seeing assigning accountability partners being effective. We're not seeing more teaching being effective. And the reason why is because these are only very small parts of discipling, and we want to understand where we want to go. So we have 7 things here, and the first is we want to be a curiosity leader. The second is we are going to mentor. So that's a common one, probably not a big surprise there. And so we want to use all the wisdom that comes with the role of mentoring. We don't want to throw it out because sometimes we see that that's the only function that a so-called discipler is using. We want them to be more than mentors, but we do want them to be mentors. And really, what the mentoring is basically the relationship as the mentor comes in, is that you establish trust between a seasoned Christian and a new Christian or a novice Christian, and that trust is mutual. It goes both ways. The mentor both trusts the disciple to carry out the assignments and to pay attention and to come ready, but the disciple also has an expectation and trust that the mentor who is seasoned is going to show up for them and understand how they're carrying themselves and how they're teaching. There's the third one. So we have the curiosity leader. we have the mentor role, and then we also have a teaching role. Again, not a real big surprise there. The teaching is actually a gift in the church. So, right, so and that's probably why teaching is probably the I guess the one function that seems to overwhelm every attempt to disciple. But teaching is only one small part. It is not the whole thing. And if we only stay in a teaching role, we can't be that curiosity leader. We can't be that mentor, and we need to know the difference between them. So that's 3: curiosity leader, a mentor, the role of the teacher, and then there's the role of the trainer. So we're going to train them. We're not just going to give them the information. We're going to train them in how to walk with the Lord. And we see that in how to carry themselves with a prayer list, how to read the Bible. And so we're going to train them how to do these things. Then the next role is going to be coaching. So coaching is a word that has been introduced within our society probably over the last 30 years as kind of a new industry, and it has a very powerful way of approaching growth that the church absolutely needs. And the idea is that a coach is powerful in the function of helping a disciple can not only move forward, but move forward in very sustained and understandable ways. And so we'll talk more about that as well. So that is the 5th role. And again, they're not in any particular order, except for I will make a little bit bigger deal of the curiosity leader. The next role, which is number 6 for our purposes today, would be modeling. And if you've listened to the series that I did on how to start a disciple off, you'll see that I model prayer for them. I want them to understand what it is, not just by telling them. I show them what it is. I show them what prayer is by praying. And so modeling. And we want to know what that is. We want to understand its purpose. And then also the last one, which is nurturing. And there's going to be times where we're going to nurture that disciple through the tough parts. We don't want them just to have the head knowledge. We want to develop the fortitude in them so that as things unfold in their life and they are challenged, sometimes the Satan, the world, and their flesh gets the best of them, and we want to be there to help them recover. And then the last thing that I want to bring out, which is not a role of discipleship, it is actually specifically not a role, which is counseling. And counseling, of course, is a very much needed position in the church, and we want wise and wonderful counselors, but the discipler is not that person. So if somebody is hurt from something in the past that they need to recover before they can move forward, we want to do our due diligence and we want to do right by them by getting them to a counselor as fast as possible if they'll accept it. And the other couple reasons why is because they're never going to be effective in their walking in discipleship if there is a hurt that is so deep that it absolutely needs to be overcome before you can move them forward. We want to make sure that we get them to a counselor, and what we're doing for them is we're getting them to a solution for that hurt that is very deep and needs help. We want to get them to somebody who's been trained in that area and understands how to deal with those past hurts and then move them forward. And then when they have got the healing that they need, we're going to take them back and we're going to begin discipling again. And again, if somebody needs a counselor, you cannot be effective in your discipling because it's so forward-looking and it's in the moment, whereas counseling is needed to help people deal with things from the past. And there's many other reasons, but that's kind of the short reason why. So. But that'll wrap us up today. It's always good to have you here on Discipleship Unveiled. I'm Rob Haley. If you find discipleship interesting, I invite you to join us here. We appreciate you listening in. Please send comments or questions to discipleshipunveiled@gmail.com. That's discipleshipunveiled@gmail.com, or comment wherever you may find the show. Jesus is Lord. Be blessed, and God bless our disciplers.